Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Maldonado, and I'm the creator and founder of Sew Your Bag. So, tonight we're going to do part three of our Pwani or beach carryall. In part one, we covered how to cut the fabric and the interface. In part two, we installed or attached actually the handles to our bag. And tonight we're going to be doing the lining and finishing it up. So tonight you should have the unfinished part of your bag. So it shouldn't be finished, but you should have the exterior and the bottom piece and the lining and the accent piece, everything completed. And we're just going to do the interior. So let's get started. So what you're going to need for tonight are several pieces. You're going to need the bottom of your bag, and the bottom of your bag, we cut two of these pieces initially, and we used one for the exterior on part two, and tonight we need that second bottom piece. Next, you're going to need pocket pieces. So there are two internal slip pockets, and we will need the pieces for that. You should have cut and interfaced three exterior pieces, and you should have one piece that's cut in waterproof canvas or a different fabric. So make it a solid color. I wouldn't say to use your exterior piece for that, but make it a solid color because you're really not going to see it. We're also going to need our pieces for our zipper closure. So you will need two bottom pieces and you'll need two top pieces, and both of those pieces should be interfaced. And the fabric pieces are the pieces that I'm referring to. Next, you're going to need the side pieces. So you should have, for the side, you should have two pieces for the bottom, and then you should have two accent pieces for the top. You're also going to need your interior front and back, along with the corresponding accent pieces that go to the top. And you're going to need two of those. So all of these pieces and their dimensions are in the cutting instructions in the pattern. I will put the link to the pattern in the show notes, if in case you're interested. So it'll be the link to this pattern, and my other patterns will be in the show notes. I'll also put a link to the fabric as well. Last, what you're going to need is you will need one zipper. So it should be a complementing zipper, and one zipper end. So we will not be crafting a zipper end to this, but rather we'll be using a zipper end at the bottom of the zipper. So first, let's prepare our zipper. And what I do is I actually use a piece of this, which is lint roller, because the zipper does have screws in it, and I want to make sure that I grab those screws and I don't lose them. So I'm going to take out my, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. If you're part of the subscription or you purchase the box, you will get a screwdriver that comes in the box as well. So in the box, I try to give you, or I do give you, everything you need to complete a bag. So you'll get the any interfacing, exterior, lining fabric, along with any hardware. And if you need a tool, as best as I can, I will give you the tool. I won't be giving you a hammer, but sometimes I will give you a tool that you need to install hardware. So we're going to remove these screws. There are two of them, and I do use the lint roller because it's sticky. And I'm just going to unscrew those. Yes, there is an electric screwdriver you can get. I do not use an electric screwdriver. I actually use a regular screwdriver, and that's because I have gotten a little over anxious or zealous with the electric screwdriver, and I have stripped the heads of the screws. So I'm just going to unscrew this. You know, these pieces of lint are just coming from everywhere. Okay. And so the screws came out. I am also using what's known as zipper by the yard. So if you look at the zipper by the yard, you'll notice there is no metal ends. If you purchase a zipper in the store, for example, if you purchase a zipper at Joann's or a sewing store, I actually cut off the metal ends because I have broken needles when I've tried to sew across it. So I cut them off, and because I do finish the ends of the zipper, they're not needed as stops. So they're really on there to stop the zipper pull from sliding off and on. So we're going to start at the end of the zipper, the raw edge, where the zipper pull is square. So you want to start where this is square. This will be at the end of your zipper. I'm going to also grab a piece of foam or some surface that you can put your hardware on so that you don't scratch it. So this is a matte or electro black zipper end. However, if you're using gold or nickel or something like that, I advise you to use something like this because we're going to have to press down and we're going to have to screw. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to fold. Remember, it's the end where it's flat, but I'm going to turn it to the back of it and I'm going to fold it towards the middle on one side and towards the middle on the other side. Okay. Once we've done that, we're then going to add our zipper end. So I'm going to cut off this little extra thread that I have going on here. When we install the zipper end, this is upside down, so this also has to be on the wrong side so that we can see the screw holes. I'm just going to slide that over this. If you want, you can put in some beacon glue if you want it to stick in there. I don't normally have any problems with it coming out, but you can use beacon in glue if you need to. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use, it's called Thread Locker, and it's the blue one. And I'm going to use some of that. I do not stick it in the holes themselves because I don't want to make a mess. But what I do rather is I just put a drop or so on the threads of the screws. It actually creates like a rubbery finish, and it helps the screws from not becoming dislodged. So that's the nice thing about this, and that's how it's used. Hi, Cheryl. She said, I love, love, love. Who's I don't know who Facebook user is, but welcome. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of these, and not because I put them in the kit, but because I have a lot of them. And I have them everywhere. And they're also good for, like, if you wear glasses, like I wear glasses, so they're very good for that as well. So I'm always looking for like a little screwdriver. So you're just going to return the screws once you've done that to the holes, and just screw down, and it'll stop when it's done. And then I'm just going to take the next one over here, and you should keep a damp cloth around. And I'm trying not to touch. I don't know if you notice, I'm trying not to touch my my zipper too much because that is blue. So if you have a light colored zipper, just be very careful with this. So I'm just going to screw it till it goes all the way down. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup. So I'm going to, by cleanup, I mean I'm going to take the blue stuff off my fingers, and I'm going to wipe off any extra thread locker that's on there. So the foam helps to protect the end, and then this, you don't need this tape, this lint piece anymore, so you can throw that away. Okay, so that's your zipper. So we're going to prep the zipper a little bit. Hey, Chanova, how are you? And then this one is Susan. Hi, Susan. I know you're probably just popping in. I had, oh my goodness, it was awful earlier today when I tried to do this. It was just technology didn't cooperate. Everything froze. Vignette was on. She was trying to tell me she had to call me. It got real ugly real quick. So I decided I would just cancel and delete that recording and then redo it. And hopefully this one will go a lot smoother. We had a little bit of a storm earlier, so I think that may have knocked something out, but it's hopefully better now. And I'm glad that more of you are able to join. So what I'm doing is in the instructions on this raw edge, I need to finish it off. So remember I said to you, if you buy a store-bought zipper, there are like these metal pieces here, and it stops the pull from sliding off. What I do is I cut those off if I bought that type of zipper. So I have these raw edges. I then in the directions tell you to place a mark on either side here. And what I have you do is fold this raw edge, so this short edge, to meet this side edge. And the way you do that is the mark that's drawn, you just simply pinch it. So you would pinch it and you'd pull down on the top. And when you do that, it makes that angle on the side, which is a 90-degree angle. Now I can put in a pin or you can use a clip. Some people will hand stitch this. I'm going to machine stitch it down, but you can whip stitch it on the edge over here to hold it in place. I'm going to take this side and do the same thing. So you would have had a mark here. You're then going to rotate it, pinching, making sure this part of the zipper comes up and matching the edges. You can clip this as well. You can put a clip in it. I put the pin so you could see it, but you can put the clip in it as well if all you have is clips. Okay. And then what I do is when I go to the sewing machine, I put the needle down to make sure I catch all of those layers. And then I remove whatever the object is. So if it's a clip or it's a pin, I do that. So now because this is at 90-degree angles, they're even, and this won't slide off. So before we go to the sewing machine, I'm going to set this aside. Yeah, I don't know. They said it was going to be raining off and on. It was a nice day today, but it was very humid. So you could tell that it was coming. So the next thing we're going to get is our zipper closure piece because we're going to work on our zipper. So we should have two pieces that are on the bottom. So that would be your interior fabric if you're not using waterproof canvas. In this case, it is the waterproof canvas. So whatever your lining fabric is. And that's because you want to make sure that when you do your bag, you get a nice finish, right? So inside the bag, when I lift this, I want it to match. You can see over here, I want it to match my lining. So I want to finish it. It looks even better on this side. So you can see how it looks like one continuous piece of fabric on the inside under there. You can, if you want to, because you may not have enough fabric, you can do the top and the underside, which is this piece here. You can do that in exterior fabric if you want. It's your bag. Make it the way you want. It's just a suggestion, but you can make it any way you want. So what I'm going to mark this piece first just so that I can show you. So yesterday or Monday it was Tuesday actually, when I cut this piece, what I did is I drew an arrow on both of my pieces. And that was because then I would know that that was my center. So I'm going to flip this back over. My arrows are pointing towards the middle. You can see a little bit of interfacing there, but there you go. So the arrows are pointing this way and up. And what happens is when I put the zipper in now, it will then, so when I add my zipper, it doesn't really matter which way you add it, but when I add the zipper in here, it'll make it look as if it's a continuous pattern. So it's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect, but it will, give the illusion because remember, we have to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it gives that illusion. Hey, Miss Jillian. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to set my zipper to the side. Welcome. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on one piece and then the other piece. Okay. So I know if I lay my zipper down, I know this is the tail end over here on the right. And this is the head of my zipper. So when I open it, it's going to open over to the right. That's how I want it to be. If you don't want it to be that, you can just flip your pieces around this way, and that's how it will be. So it's up to you. It depends on the print that you're using, but however you want it to be. So I'll just leave it like this since it's already like this. So I'm going to just slide this out of the way, and I need to make two markings. One is going to correspond to the end where the zipper end is, and the other end is going to correspond to the opening. But once again, this is the center. So I'm going to just flip this way. My arrow is pointing up to my center, and I'm going to make a mark at my tail. So my tail, I need to finish off. So I want it to be nice. So what I will do is I will draw a line here, and I will fold it under so that when I sew onto it, it has a finished edge. So in the pattern, it tells you to mark a line. So I will tell you what that line is. It's a 1/2 inch from the raw edge. And that's because I want my fold to be 1/4 inch. So if you want your fold to be 1/4 inch, the reason I didn't draw a line here at the 1/4 inch is because when I try to fold it, I won't be able to see the line. So I doubled that 1/4 inch to get the 1/2 inch. And then now when I fold to that line, I will be fine. I'm going to add some double-sided tape. You can add some fabric, a couple of drops of fabric tack on here, or you can use a glue stick. But I'm going to use this double-sided tape. So I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to fold it to that line. I'm going to peel the backing off of the tape. And this can be tricky. Okay. And then I'm just going to fold this into that line. So I'm just going to fold it down. So the raw edge should touch that line that I just drew. Now I will tell you when we go to add this, we may have to adjust that because we want it to align with the waterproof canvas piece. So sometimes things shift, but we'll talk about that if that happens. So this is the edge that's going to be at the tail, right? This edge, I need to attach the zipper. So I need to draw a line so I know where I should be attaching the zipper. So I'm actually going to start my zipper attachment here at 1/4 inch. So I'm going to draw that 1/4 inch. So usually you would start it wherever what happened. Okay, so Nancy, I don't know if you're on here. I deleted it. I'm sorry, I just saw a text. And I just saw a text in the group, and I just want to make sure everybody's with us. If they choose to be. I know people are busy. This, by the way, I'm streaming, trying to use the right terminology. I'm streaming to Facebook, the private group, and YouTube, and it will be recorded. So I deleted the early recording, and I just wanted to let someone know who's looking for it, I think. All right. So this is 1/4 inch. So you're going to draw the line based on your seam allowance, because when I sew the zipper in, I'm using 1/4 inch. If you're sewing and you're using 3/8 inch, then use a 3/8 inch line, right? Because what I want is when I put this on here, I want to run along those teeth so that I get a nice clean edge at my zipper. And I'll show you that when I'm done. So I did it for this one. I now need to do it for, so I flipped that over. I did it for that one. I now need to do it for this one. So we're going to flip it over again. This is my center. I'm going to draw a line on this side. All right. And we said it was a 1/2 inch because we want a 1/4 inch fold. You can make the fold anything. You can make the fold a 1/2 inch and then you draw an inch. I just made it a 1/4 inch. But that side you can make anything. Okay, this side, I'm going to draw a line 1/4 inch. And the reason I drew 1/4 inch once again is because I'm sewing along that line. Okay, I'm going to add some double-sided tape on this side. And I may or may not, depending on where I put the double-sided tape. Okay. All right, so we're going to do something different. I'm just going to use a glue stick to hold it down. It's going to pop into my line of vision when I'm not looking for it. So I'm just going to use it. This is just a glue stick. It's Staples glue stick. And I'm just going to put some glue on there, just like that. And I just really want to keep it down. That's really what I want to do. So, and I buy those when they're on sale at the school year because you can get a whole like container. So now you can see I glued it down. All right. And I'm just going to put some clips in it. And that's only because I want to make sure that it doesn't lift away. But it'll stay. But you can see you can use that. So that's the second one. And when I put it on, it'll look like that. For this piece here, I did the same thing. So there's a double-sided tape. I fold it over. And I did this earlier today. So I'm just going to put some clips to hold it. And I marked my line. So I also marked the line on this side. And this one already has the clips. So those are the 2 pieces that we're going to need, or 4 pieces that we're going to need to sew our zipper in. So now we're going to go to the cutting mat, the sewing machine, and we're going to attach it. So I'm going to baste it in first. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take, I only need 1 piece. So I'm going to take these 3 pieces. Okay. And I have my top exterior. It could be the bottom. It doesn't matter. If you want to open your bag this way, then it doesn't matter right now. When we go to put in the zipper, we're going to install it. If you want to open it going from left to right, you'd put it in this way, install it this way. If we're doing it right to left, we install it the other way. So it depends on how you open your bags. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take this. I know that it needs to sit like that at this mark, right? That 1/4 inch mark. But before I do that, so it'll go like this, just to show you when I'm done, right? There should be a 1/4 inch line right here. Before I do that, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to tack these pieces down on this side because I want to make sure that they don't come dislodged. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to pin it. We're going to pin it in such a way that, or clip it, so then we can make sure that we're sewing it on. So this is what I do. I put the needle in the down position, and then I pull everything out. So I'm not going to lower the presser foot yet. I'm just putting this under the needle. I want to get it at 1/8 of an inch, and 1/8 of an inch should be along this edge, and it's the inside of my presser foot. So I don't start here. I start like right here. Okay, so I start a little before the teeth, and I stitch down, and then I go back. So I'm going to stick it under there. I'm going to lower my needle and, don't hit that, this pin. Once I've done that, I can pull out the pin because the sewing machine needle is holding the pieces together. I'm then going to drop my presser foot. I'm going to go forward first and then backward. I do it at the regular stitch length of 3, so it's nothing fancy, but I go forward first and then I go backwards. Because if I go backwards first, sometimes what I have found, and I'll show you, when I go backwards first, sometimes what I find is it will move this piece up. So it doesn't stay flush with that piece right there. Okay, so that's why I go forward and then back. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Remember I said to you I'm going to drop my needle in there. So it's going to be a little bit hard. So I'm going to take my, this is an awl that I got in one of my sewing. When you get that little kit with your sewing machine, sometimes you get these little awl things. And that's all this is. It's nothing, it's not a fancy tool. I drop the needle. I then drop the presser foot. And then remember, I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch. I go forward first, and then I go backwards. And get as close as you can to the edge, because like I said, I don't want to see those stitches, and I don't want to have to rip them out. See, I don't want to have to rip them out later on. So that's why I use 1/8 of an inch. If this is too hard for you, once again, just whip stitch it, and you should be totally fine. So let's see how we're going to put the pieces together. Just need to get my, I apologize. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we will be adding this piece. All right, so I'm going to lay my zipper like this. Once again, this is the center. I want to put it on the 1/4 inch mark, but I can't really see it on the front over here. So what I'm going to do to make sure that I do it and I do it right is I'm just going to mark a little mark right here. I can see it on my cutting mat, the 1/4 of an inch, just like that. And then I'm going to line up this edge right here of the zipper. This edge of the zipper with that 1/4 of an inch mark. And it may be hard for you to see, but I can see it. And I'm going to flip it over. If you can't see it, you can hold your piece to the side like this and you should be able to see it. All right. Before I do that, however, just to help me and give myself an extra hand, I'm going to add some glue or double-sided tape, whichever one you have. Like I said, I don't know where I did my double-sided tape. I think it fell. So you can use glue, so I'm going to just use this glue stick. Try to make sure when you use the glue stick that you just do the edge. Don't get it all over your zipper. So I'm just very lightly doing it across the edge. And that's because I tend not to use clips here. And I'm just going to run it along there. Next, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to flip this way. Make sure that I line up these teeth with that edge. And I'm going to press down. Okay. I do have the pull in the way here, so I am going to pull it all the way down. Because I've added that end, it should not slide off. So I'm going to do this. And I'm going to press. Okay? And you can see the glue holds it. All right? If you want, you can always add just a couple of clips. I'm going to be sewing it from the zipper side, and I'll tell you why. It's because I want to keep this bulk away from my the bed of my sewing machine. So that's why I sew it from the zipper side. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to baste it in. So I'm not going to sew it at 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to sew it at 1/8 of an inch. Because once I've done that, I'm going to need to add the lining piece. And when I add the lining piece, I'll then do it. The reason that I do it that way is because if I do one at 1/4 of an inch and then I come back and stitch the next one, it's a little bit off. Sometimes you'll see the stitching. So if I do this one first, when I come back and do this one, that's when I'll do the 1/4 of an inch. So let's sew this in at 1/8 of an inch, and make sure that right here you do have that 1/4 of an inch, because you're going to not stitch to the edge. Okay. So just because I want you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to, right here, I'm going to open up my zipper, get the rest of that zipper out of the way because you don't need it. I'm going to put this here and I'm going to sew at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to put my needle down because I don't want any shifting happening, and then I'll put my presser foot down. And then I'll just remove those clips as I go. And I am using that stitch length of 3, by the way. I haven't changed my stitch length at all. And on this side, my 1/8 of an inch is on the inside. Now, when I get down here to the bottom piece, I'm going to stop a little bit short of the end, and that's because I want to make sure that I'm not putting stitches on my zipper that you're going to see. So I just want to get, I'm going to stop a little bit shy of the end, and I'm going to back tack. So I stopped here, and my piece is here, right? And that's why I did that, because I don't want to see the stitches. Okay? So let's go back and see how this looks. All right. So we've done that. And we're going to take a look. I think we're going to take a look over it. Okay. So when I fold this back, you can see that it's in there. I also want to show you right here how it's 1/4 of an inch. So it should be where the line is. When I come back and I sew it 1/4 of an inch, you'll see how I lock it in. When I turn it over here, you can see very slightly right here where I stopped sewing. There was a little bit of shift in this because I can see my line, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. So now it's time to add the waterproof canvas. So we have one piece in. Once again, this is my center. I'm going to grab one of my waterproof canvas pieces, and I'm going to lay it. So this is right side up. I'm going to lay this right side down or wrong side up, just like that. What I want to do is I want to match this folded edge. So these folded edges here should match, right? So I get a nice clean edge over there. And then this side here should also match. Okay. If you have to make an adjustment at any point here, match the folded edge. And then once it's here, you can just cut off any extra. That's easier than trying to fiddle with the folded edge and make it match. Okay. So let's put this waterproof canvas on. And I'm just going to add some more of this glue. And when I'm done, I will go get some more double-sided tape. So I'm just doing like little spots. It dries clear. So I'm just doing a couple little drops to hold it in place. Right sides together, right? Once again, line up the folded edge. That's the part that's critical here, not the raw edge, because the raw edge we can always snip off later. So line these up. I'm just going to put a clip to line them up. And then I'm going to press this down where I put the glue. Just like that. Okay. What I will say to you is we are going to sew three of the edges. So I'm just going to add some clips. It's not sticking to the waterproof canvas so well. Alrighty then. And then what we'll also do is we're gonna sew two of the edges. So we're gonna sew across this way, and then we're gonna sew down. Do not sew the folded end over here because we're going to need to flip the zipper out. And when we flip it out, you won't be able to flip it out at that corner. So you're only going to sew along this side and down this side. So you can make an L. It's going to be at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're going to make an L. We're not going to sew the folded edge. We're just going to sew along the top and down the side. I'm just actually just positioning myself here. So my 1/4 of an inch is going to be the edge of my presser foot. Once again, when you sew this, start as close as you can to this edge without going onto the actual zipper tape, because the last thing you want is to have any thread showing. We're going to put a top stitch on there anyway, so we're going to seal that. So I'm just starting like a little bit in, like halfway between the two. And then we're going to sew across at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, which I said is the edge of my zipper. I am still using a stitch length of 3, so I'm going to sew forward and backwards and just stitch across. When I get to that line, which is a 1/4 of an inch line, I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave my needle in the down position. Make sure it's coming up, right? So rotate your wheel over here. Lift your presser foot and then rotate. And then you want to sew along that line, because that was your 1/4 of an inch line. I back stitch, actually go all the way out to the end, and then I sew all the way across. Okay, and then you should be done. I'm just going to very quickly grab a roll of double-sided tape because I'm not liking the glue. And let's see what this looks like. I tend to use the 1/8 inch when I'm doing zippers, only because that way I don't have to worry too much about it showing. But that's sewed. Remember I said we're sewing across the zipper and down the opening, which is the unfinished edge on that side. I'm just going to take out these clips. Before I do anything, I'm going to cut this at an angle. So I'm going to cut this at a 45-degree angle because I want to make sure I can pull that out. And it's neat. Cut about 1/8 of an inch from your stitches. Do not cut the threads, right? So I'm just going to cut it like this at an angle. So hopefully you can see that. I cut that at an angle. And then what I do is I trim this to about 1/8 of an inch. So that's the short edge. And that just helps reduce the bulk. All right. So now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this right side out. Remember I said do not sew this folded edge when you sewed it. When you push it out, I'm just pushing it out with my fingertips. I then tug gently on this piece right here. And because I use that 1/4 of an inch, which is my seam allowance, you can see the zipper falls right there and it's in a straight line. If you have a 3/8 of an inch, then make the line 3/8 of an inch. If it's too long, you'll see the fabric stick up. So you'll have like about 1/8 of an inch sticking up, which is why I did it at my seam allowance, because I don't want that extra fabric up there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this and I'm going to finger press it. You can take it to the iron and iron it. Just be careful not to iron on that waterproof canvas. So I'm just going to finger press this like this. I'm going to grab some clips and I'm going to clip along this top edge. Once again, match up your folded edges over here. So make sure they match up and clip them. Because I'm using polyester thread, I can do this. If you're using cotton thread, I don't advise you to do this, but I'm using polyester thread so I can, it was very close. I just wanted to get rid of those threads. All right, and you just pull this down. And like I said, you can, if you want to iron it on the right side. Don't iron it on the wrong side. And you're going to iron that flat. Okay. So this will be your zipper when we're done. I'm gonna come back and do the top stitching after I've done the other side. So I do all the top stitching at one time. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want to attach this side, the opposite side. So the way I'm going to do that is the same way, right? I'm going to take a piece of double-sided tape. And I'm just going to run it along this edge. I recommend that you iron your zipper tape. So in other words, iron on the fabric to smooth it out. It actually makes such a difference. The other thing is if you're not using some type of, like this double-sided tape helps it to stay smooth. If you're just sewing it in or basting it in and you're not using some type of adhesive to hold it down, you may also find that your zippers don't come out straight. So I'd recommend that you iron the zipper, and that's this piece of the zipper, right? And then I also recommend that you use some type of tape like this, or glue stick, or you know, the beacon, put a couple of drops, and because it'll help to keep it straight. All right, so then I'm going to do that, and it also helps to keep it smooth. I stopped, by the way, I stopped over here, which is a little bit extra. So after I pull it off, I'm going to take this little piece off before I sew it. So we're going to grab our piece that is matching the other side, and I'm going to put it this way, right? Because that's my center, right? That was my center. So I'm going to put it this way so when I flip it back, the design kind of matches. All right, so I'm going to peel this off. Let's peel off the whole thing. I can see this is kind of too long, so I'm just going to take that and peel it, you know, pick it up and peel it off before I start sewing. And then I'm just going to put it back on itself over here, but you can cut it. All right. Once again, I'm going to flip it this way, and my center arrow should line up, and you want to make sure that that 1/4 inch mark lines up with that edge there. So we're going to put that on there just like that. And then we're going to press, I'm pressing down gently only because I want to see on this side to make sure that it's not like this is a little bit off. So I just want to lift it up and then put it back down because the edge wasn't matching the edge of the fabric. It was a little lower down than it should be. So then I'm going to do that. Okay. So then that's on. Okay. I'll show you a shortcut. You can baste this in. This time I'm not going to baste it in. I normally do, but if you want to, I'll show you. You can actually add them together, sandwich them at one time, and then just do your 1/4 inch. I baste it because I want it to be as neat as possible, but if you put the double-sided tape, it stays on there. You can then add another piece of double-sided tape on the other side, And this time your double-sided tape can come all the way to the end over here. And that's because we're going to sew our L, right? So it's okay if it comes off the zipper. And I'm just going to put it on the other side like this. So if you've never done this before, I recommend that you come in and you baste and then you come back again. I know it seems like it's a lot of extra work, but believe me, when you're first starting out, it'll help you reduce your frustration. And I do this even today. I do it in stages, but I know some people take shortcuts. So now that's on there. I'm going to peel this off the backing. The only thing you have to remember about this is that the fold has to be to the right, okay? But there's no like center mark on this. So I'm going to put the fold to the right because it has to match at the end. Gently press this down. I'm going to clip my folds together. And the reason I clip them together is because then I know that they're perfectly aligned for when I open it up. So I'm going to clip those together just like that. All right. I'm going to make sure that when I flip this over, I'm going to make sure that the waterproof canvas isn't too high. All right. And it looks perfect. If you need to, and you can see it stays together. So that's a zipper sandwich, right? Because the zipper's in the middle. So one side's the bread, one side, the other side's the bread, and in the middle is the peanut butter, which is your zipper. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this the same way, right? So we're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once again, it will catch right at the edge of your zipper. Okay. And then we're going to sew across the zipper itself. We are not going to sew this piece here. So I'm going to take that to the sewing machine and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew on this line and I'm going to back tack. I am still using a stitch length of 3. When I get to about a 1/4 inch from the bottom, with the needle in the down position, I'm going to rotate my arm to make sure it's going in the up position. Lift my presser foot, grab all my pieces, and I'm going to sew down this edge at a 1/4 inch. Now here you can see when I do it, you'll see that what I mentioned before is you want to catch this, but you don't want to sew onto the zipper tape. So I want to sew it like about 1/8. And then I'm going to back tack. Cut my thread. And what I will show you is this is where you can see it's about 1/8 inch away from the edge. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to cut this at about a 1/4 inch, about 1/8 inch. So we're going to basically cut it in half because it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to cut that off to help reduce the bulk. And then we're going to cut this at a 45-degree angle, about 1/8 inch from that corner stitch. And that just helps it turn a lot nicer. So then what I'm going to do is just turn this right side out. Once again, give a gentle tug on that zipper. All right. You can see how it aligns with the curve of the zipper. This is actually, to pull this is like a lot easier with fabric. Because if this was fabric, it would be easier, but you can get it done. I'm going to line up this side or this folded edges, and I'm going to add a clip so that I keep them together and they're nice and neat. I am going to zip up my zipper. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to press this flat. So I'm just pushing this away, the fabric away, and making it flat. So I'm just pulling both sides, making it as flat as you can. Yes, come back with an iron and iron on this, the right side, so it's totally flat. I'm going to clip along the top here to hold it in place. Right now I'm just finger pressing. You can use a roller. I think Nancy mentioned yesterday that she has a roller. You can definitely use a roller. You can use a hero marker, whatever you want. So show you the top. So you can see how they have that gentle curve at the top. So I could probably pull out just a little bit more. But that's what it looks like at the top. And then if you look at your pattern, you can see it has like that V. Yes, there is that 1/4 inch seam allowance that it's not matching perfectly, but you know, it looks like it's more continuous than if this was gold and then the blue was down here. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to stitch using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to top stitch. So we're going to top stitch everything. So we're going to top stitch across, down the side, across the bottom, up the side. And we're going to do that on both pieces. And remember I said I do the stitching of these openings because it makes it easier when I go to attach it to the bag. I don't have pieces that don't get caught. If they're together, then I'd have to miss the whole thing. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that piece now. So because it's a top stitch, I'm going to use I'm going to use an 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to change the top stitch length to between a 4 and a 4.5. Once you iron it, it should be crisp. I didn't iron mine, but once you iron it, it should be crisp. I'm just going to push it. And I'm going to start at this upper end, and I'm going to come down to this zipper at the corner. Now, if you want, you can make a sharp turn, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. 1/8 inch for the stitch length of 4 and 4.5. So when you get to this corner, you can either do this and make a sharp left in this case. So leave the needle down, make sure it's going in the up position, rotate it 90 degrees and stitch across. What I like to do is, instead of doing that, is I rotate it 45 degrees, or about 45 degrees, this way. I lower my needle. Sorry, I should have lifted it. I rotate it about 45 degrees because remember, this is kind of like a gentle curve. I then take like 1 or 2 stitches down, then I lift it again, and then I rotate it again. So you're going to do that, and this one needs 3. And then you're going to lift it and rotate it, and then it should put you there, but it'll give you like a nice curve. Also, what you can do at that corner is reduce your stitch length. If you're going to do it this way instead of the sharp curve, you're going to try to give a gentle curve. Reduce it down to maybe a 2. Take a couple of stitches at an angle, and then put it back up to 4. If you need to move your zipper pull out of the way, move it out of the way. With the number 5 and the 1/4 inch, it doesn't get in the way. Some patterns will tell you to do 3/8 inch. I usually say 1/4 inch because for new bag makers, it's easier to know it's the edge of the presser foot or the inside. So I'm going to go across the zipper edge. And I am gently separating it, so I'm pulling it this way to make sure it lies as flat as possible. If you have problems doing this, by the way, you can do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you get right here to about 1/8 of an inch, leave the needle in the down position. Just rotate, make sure your needle's going up, and pivot. If you don't, we'll see how I did here. Okay. So you can see I'm a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. It's not enough to worry about, but if you wanted to and you wanted to be exact, you could turn your stitch length down. I'm going to turn mine down to 2. I'm going to take one more stitch. Then I'm going to turn it back up to 4, and I should be at 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot when I get to the end, about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to rotate again. And I'm going to just stitch across at 1/8 of an inch. And once again, I'm just attaching the waterproof canvas to the exterior fabric. And like I said, it just makes it easier when I'm putting this into the bag. I don't have to worry about it being 2 separate pieces and me not catching a piece. Okay. And just to show you, I don't know if I can show you that gentle, maybe on this side. Yeah. You can see there's like a little bit of a curve because I took a couple of stitches around the curve instead of just going this way and straight down. It's hard to see on the front because it's purple. So we're going to repeat that on this side because I'm going to start at the folded edge. I like to sew, I think I mentioned this before, I sew on the right side. I don't like wadding up my material if I don't have to in the throat of the sewing machine. So I always start on the right. But sew whatever way is comfortable for you. I'm going to sew down this side, making sure I attach that fold. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to be about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to, oops, of course I did that. I went forward by accident. I'm going to lift my presser foot. And I can't show you, but when I get past it, I'll show you. When I went past it 1/8 of an inch, what I did was when I lifted my foot, the needle wasn't coming in the up position, so it didn't get locked down that stitch. So I knew that, so then you won't see the extra stitch, but it's hard to explain what I did, but I hope you got that. And because I want this corner to be exactly like the other one when I get here, I'm going to lift my presser foot and I'm going to rotate and take those like 2 or 3 stitches that I did on the other side. I'm going to move my zipper out of the way. So I'm going to put it at an angle. I'm going to stitch once, put it at an angle, stitch once, and then rotate it all the way out. And then when you get to the top about 1/8 of an inch, you're going to sew straight across the top. So. And remember, it's at 1/8 of an inch, so we don't have to rip it out later. Okay, so we're all done with the zipper. Let's take a look and see what it looks like. Cut off any extra threads you may have. Okay, and then that's what our zipper should look like. So it's done. I didn't catch that so well, but it's done. And, you know, we have all our top stitching. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to set it aside. And we're going to work on our pockets. So we have 2 pockets that we need to work on. Hi, Facebook user. We're going to work on our pockets. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take out one of our pocket pieces. Remember I said you have 3. We only need one exterior piece, and we can put the others to the side for right now. And then we will need one of our one of our lining bottoms. So it should be the waterproof canvas piece. And then we can put the rest to the side. So we're going to construct the pockets first, and then we're going to add our border to the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half and mark the center. I'm going to mark it on the top and the bottom. You can use a marking tool to mark it. I just, fold it in half, match these side edges, and I take about 1/8 of an inch. Do not take more than 1/8 of an inch, or you will be cutting into your seam allowance, which means when you sew it together, what's going to happen is you'll have a hole. So I just cut the sides. I just fold it in half and cut it. So I don't know if you can see that there's a little nick right here in the fabric. And I'm going to do the same thing for one of my lining pieces. Now, the reason I did this is because when you open the pocket, you will see that front side, but you can use waterproof canvas if you wanted to for this part. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is take my pocket. It should be the long ways at the top and the bottom, right? So the length at the top and the bottom, and it's long over here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to match the centers here and match the raw edge going across the top. And I'm going to clip it in place. Just like that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, and I'll show you on the actual bag. So I'll turn this right side out so I can show you what pocket we're working on so you have a frame of reference. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I'm in the kit. I give you a blue zipper and a turquoisey zipper. I'm using a purple zipper, but it's a different look. So the pocket piece that we're working on is this pocket opening here. So that's the piece that we're working on. So I'm centering your fabric right sides together, and then I'm going to flip it in to make this piece. Like I said, you can make it waterproof canvas, this piece, but because it's so big and you see it, I made it the exterior fabric. So this is where we're clipping it. This is why we're clipping it. So we're going to do the pocket facing piece first, and then we're going to add the back piece. Okay? So I give you measurements. Ow. I give you measurements on where to draw lines on here in the pattern. So I'm just going to draw the lines using a pen. And this is the one that I included also in the subscription box. I give you a pretty big opening. So just to make sure that you have enough, room to come in and do what you need to do as far as turning the bag right side out. So I'm just drawing a random line, right? I'm going almost, it doesn't really matter, right? So I draw a line there. Now you would say, like normally you go, well, how deep do I want this opening to be? So if you want to do this pocket again, this depth is whatever depth you decide that you want it to be. So you pick the depth that you want it to be in there. And if you want it to be more shallow, like here, I made it pretty long because it does have this piece here. And if you wanted to get into it and you didn't want to have to lift this out of the way, you can just fold it down and grab it in there. But whatever you want to do, whatever depth you want to do it at, that's what you would do. So I'm going to measure down according to the directions, the depth. All right, so I'm just going to measure down some number. This one isn't even the pattern depth. I'm just going to make it a depth. Looks good. Okay, so you would follow the pattern. I did this a little bit off on that side, so hold on. Okay. So I did it a little bit off on this side. The reason I know is because it's not even. All right. So guys, ignore this one here. The border pieces here weren't even, so that's why I said, oh, I did it wrong, because it should be the same amount. Whatever it is, on either side, it should be the same amount on either side. So do it that way. This is not necessarily how I did it in the pattern, but you get the point, right? So my pocket opening, I mean, the dimensions may not be the same. So this is going to be my pocket opening. That's going to be the gist of it. Okay. So what I want to do is, in order to be able to turn this inside out or right side out, I'm going to sew along this U. So I'm just going to sew along this U on the sewing machine using a stitch length of 3. So I'm going to sew down from the top to the bottom corner, across the bottom, and back up to the top. I am going to turn this down to a 3. There is no like, you know, somebody may say, well, is that a 1/4 inch? Is that, you're sewing on the line, so it's not a 1/4 inch. You're just sewing on that line. And I'm just going to add for myself a couple of more clips, only because I can feel it moving. I can feel the fabric sliding on the top. So I'm just going to add some more clips along the top so that I restrict the movement a little bit more. So it doesn't slide. Okay, so now let's just sew on that line and sew that U. And I'm backpacking. Once again, when you get to that corner, if you need to, you can change your stitch length down a little bit. So if you want it to be like a 1, then just put it at a 1, you know, just to get into that corner. And I backtack for myself. You don't have to. I backtack just to make sure that when I lift this, it doesn't make that little long stitch. And I'm going to stitch along this line here. Okay. And then I'm going to do the other one right here. Sorry. I stopped at the wrong line. So I'm going to just back tack to get some of that thread, that extra thread away. My line should be out here. I could have hit this with an iron, which would have taken away that line, so I wouldn't have had that problem, but okay. So now I've done my U. I'll show you what it looks like. Take out my clips. I don't know if you can see that, but there is that line. So it goes down here and across. We're not stitching this top piece here. That should not be stitched at all. So now we're going to lay back on the cutting mat. And we're going to draw a line from this stitch line in towards the middle, we're going to draw a line that's 1/4 of an inch. So you can imagine that that line is like your seam allowance that you would normally sew on. And we're going to draw a line 1/4 of an inch. We're going to draw another line from this bottom line up 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So you're going to draw a line that's 1/4 of an inch in from that edge. So we're going to have inside of our U stitches, we're going to have another U that's not stitched. What we will do is we will cut this piece of fabric away along that U line that we just drew. So we're not cutting on the stitch line, we're cutting on the line of the U. So I'm going to cut this till I get here. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to cut along the long line here. And then I'm going to cut down this other line. So I should have a quarter of an inch seam allowance if you think about it, right? So when you're done, you will have a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance around that box. So it'll look like that. Now, once again, this is going to be the depth of our pocket, right? I didn't measure it, but if you wanted to do it up here, you could have done it where you stitch this long line a little higher up, and then you'd have a deeper pocket, or you could make the pocket longer at the bottom. All right. So I just did it's not deep, but you can stick a pair of sunglasses in there, something you want to get to your cell phone or whatever in there quickly. So the next thing we need to do is we need to push this to this side. But before we do that, we need to take a snip in this corner here, right? So we're going to cut from this corner to almost at that line. So a scant, like, I don't know, 1/8 and 1/16 of an inch. Do not cut the stitches. You're just going to cut the corner right here at a diagonal. So be very careful. What you can do is, if you're afraid that you're going to cut past it, is grab a pin, stick a pin in here like this. And that way, when you cut it, you're going to hit the pin and you won't hit the stitches. Okay, so I'm just going to cut that so it looks just like that. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. And that just helps us to get a sharp corner. If we don't do that, it won't be as clean, and you'll be frustrated because it's not doing what you want it to do. But once again, don't cut those stitches. Okay, so now I have both of my corner pieces, my snips in the corner. Now I can turn it inside out. So what I do is I just fold this, and I fold this, and I fold this. Okay. Just to make it, sit nice on the other side. And then what I do is I just pull this to the back. That's all I'm doing. Notice at that corner, it spreads out, which is what you really want it to do. And you're going to make sure, just to show you, take some clips, press this with your finger just to see what it looks like. I'm going to clip it there. Do the same thing over here. And I don't need that much fabric on the outside here because I'm going to sew another piece to it, but I don't need as much fabric. So to make it a little, if you make it narrow, you don't need as much fabric. So you can cut it less. Because it's such a big bag, I really want it to give a big opening. So now I'm going to push this down just like this. I always start in the middle, and I'm just going to clip around. You can, and I'm just rolling it, meaning that I'm rolling back and forth. It's almost like rubbing it to get that down like that. And you can use your Hera marker or your roller, whatever you need to use to get this down. You can iron it from the front, even though you may be tempted to iron it from the back. Please do not, because there's that wax, there's that waterproof canvas. You should notice that in your corners, it's pretty easy to get a clean corner and not see the fabric. And that's because we took the snip. And then I'm just going to add. So I add like a lot of clips here to this opening. And we're going to top stitch this, right? So we're going to top stitch around that U. And then we'll add the back to the pocket. If you iron it, it becomes more pliable and it may be easier for you to do this. So do what you need to do. I think I did enough ironing in the videos. I don't think you guys want to see me do more ironing. Hey, Brenda. Yeah, I don't know. I still am not learning the ins and outs of StreamYard. There's always something new. It's, you know, every day is a holiday with StreamYard. Okay. So there we go. So I clipped it. I put a couple 100,000 clips in here, but that's what it looks like. So that's going to be our opening. When we're done, just to show you a little bit of what's going to happen. When we're done, we will be taking one of these other exterior pieces. We will be laying it down like this, and that's how I get the back, and this is the fold, and we will be attaching it to our pocket, these edges that we just sewed. So we'll be attaching it here and then across the bottom. So we will have some excess on the bottom, but it was easier to just tell you to cut it all the same length and trim it up later. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to top stitch around this curve or around this box at 1/8 of an inch and a stitch length of 4 because it is a top stitch. It seems to be cooperating now, the StreamYard is, but earlier today, like I said, I think it was a storm. We had some rain, and as soon as that happened, it just... So I'm changing my stitch length to 4 because it was on a 3. I do back tack. And take your time. If you have to take a smaller stitch or a half a stitch, so if you have to turn down at the bottom here just to get that, you know, extra half a stitch, then do that for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so now that's all done. You can see I top stitched all the way around here. It's all done. And we're going to add the back of the bag now, the back of the pocket now. Okay. So grab your pocket, one of your lining, I'm sorry, your exterior pieces. Now on the outside, the front of my bag, I actually did the peaks going down, so I'll do the same thing here. I don't even know if I paid attention over here. Oh yeah, I did. That was totally by accident. But it doesn't really matter. I like to have a contrasting or accent pocket, and the reason that I like that is because when you're looking into your bag, when you open that pocket, you know that you see the pocket. I personally don't like bags where the pocket lining is the same color as the pocket itself, because it's hard to see the distinction when I'm reaching into my bag. But, to each his own. So what I'm going to do is turn this over to the wrong side, like that. And what you want to do is you want to match right sides together, but you want to match these two edges together. So I would do that first, and then I would go and align the bottom. Right? So you want to align these corners, because then you know that it's at the top. So you stick a couple of clips in there. And you will have excess here. We're going to cut that off in a few minutes. But just do this. And clip this in place. If you have any questions, let me know. I use, it's actually this Schmetz one, and it says it's very odd. It's a 90 needle, I believe. But I use this, whatever the standard needle size is. Hold on, I'll hold it up to the, this is 90, 100, but it's a 90. And I'll hold it up to the camera, and hopefully you'll be able to see. That's what I use. But I think there's like an 80-14. I use these because they're sharp. I like a sharp needle. 90-14, yes. But on Schmetz, it doesn't say 90-14. It just says 90, and then it has 100. But the 100 is about the shank, because the needle sizes could be different, because I can't use these on my industrial. But it's a 90 needle. No worry, Brenda, anytime. Okay. So now we have that. I have a little overhang. You may have a bigger than that. What I'm going to do, because I can see it's also bigger on this side too, I'm going to just fold this down like this, so it's totally flat. And I'm just going to cut a little bit off the bottom. So you can sort of see, like, this side is a little bit longer. It's because of the way that I cut it, and it's wonky, but I'm just going to cut maybe like 1/4 inch off the bottom, which should account for the seam allowance that I sewed the lining with. So I'm just going to cut that right off here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave as big an opening as I possibly can in this. So now it's even, right? So when I sew it, I'm going to sew it from this side, because when I actually, when I get to the sewing machine, I'm going to fold this in. So I'm going to fold this in just like that. Just adding a clip here. And I'm going to fold this side in like that. And I'm going to add a clip. Okay. And then I'm going to just sew, because then that makes it easy to see how I'm doing this. So once I fold those in, I can then just sew across here, across the bottom and up. What I'm going to do at the bottom, though, is I'm going to leave a big opening down here. So when I sew across the bottom, I want to leave as much in here as possible. And I think I actually leave like an 8, maybe almost like an 8 or 9 inch opening at the bottom. So just leave a big enough opening. I'm just going to, just continue my line here. But in the directions, it tells you right? So right here and right here, I'm going to sew down the side here at 1/4 inch. When I come across, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to do the same thing, come down the side 1/4 inch. And when I come here, I'm going to stop there. So then that'll leave this big opening for you to turn your bag through. All right. And I'm going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're going to do that, and a stitch length of 3. You get to about 1/4 inch, you're going to stop. Make sure your needle is in the down position and pivot. And I didn't get quite there. And then when I get to that opening, that mark right here, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to back tack. And the reason you back tack there is because when you're turning the bag through that opening, when you're turning the bag through this opening, if you don't back tack and you have to tug at it, it rips. Whereas if you back tack it, it reinforces it. And so it helps you not rip that opening too wide again. So that's why you back tack. So on this side, instead of starting at the top, because I want to see my line, I'm going to start at the mark at the bottom over here, and I'm going to stitch across. And remember to back tack. And then sew up the side. Now I'm going to show you something. So if you want to, and I know some people, and I try to make it easy, the pattern easy for a beginner. But really what you can do is you can sew as close as you can on this side here and as close as you can at this side here till you get to the bottom. So we're like almost like where that line is that I drew straight down. And what will happen is this piece here, you can actually cut off, leaving like maybe like 1/4 or 1/2 or 3/8 of an inch on the end. But when you do that, and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about, you do that so that in the pocket, you don't have any room to stick your hand to the side over here. So when you do that, what'll happen is it'll end here, and you then won't be able to stick your hand to the side. I don't care. And it's just easier to tell people to just sew the edges and give them enough room that they can sew that edge, right? So giving them enough fabric. But if you wanted to come in a little closer, you could, if it bothered you. It doesn't bother me. So that's done. So now make sure, just go in and double check, lift your pocket open, and make sure you can stick your hand in there, because that's where we're going to be turning the pocket through. So we can take this and we can set it to the side. So that's one pocket done. We're then going to take our other 2 pocket pieces, and which are these 2 pieces. Okay. And we're just going to turn them right sides together. Very easy. Right sides together like this. Okay. Mine is a little bit long, but that's okay. And we're going to clip it together. Now, what we're going to do with this is we are going to sew it only on 3 sides. We're not going to sew it on all the sides. We're going to leave this bottom piece open because we're going to close this up when we sew it into the bag. So we don't have to sew it in on 3 sides. We only have, I mean, on all 4 sides. We're only going to sew it on 3 sides. And I just want to cut off this extra here. Okay. So figure out, look at your print, figure out which side is up. Remember, I put my peaks going down. So this is up. I'm going to sew up this side, across the top, and down the bottom, and down the other side. Leave this side open. We're going to turn it through that side. And I'm actually sewing it from the fabric side. And the reason I'm doing that is because the waterproof canvas is slick. And because it's slick, I want it to be able to slide. I want to be able to slide across this bed. So it's usually whatever side is smoother and will glide easier is what I do. So I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to sew, like I said, starting at one short edge, come to the top, pivot, and then sew across the top and down the other side. Okay. So now that we've done that, we're going to cut, we're going to cut these corners at an angle, just to make them so that when we turn it inside out, it becomes pointier. And we're going to cut that at an angle too. Okay. Now we're going to stick our hands in here and we're going to turn it right side out. Okay, I'm just going to point that right out. I'm going to poke it. Some people take a pin and pull it out, but I'm just poking that right out. You can use a knitting needle, a crochet hook, whatever you want to do that. Let me do this. I'm using the Hero marker, so take it easy on my fingers. Once again, you can iron this waterproof canvas on the side. And pull it out. It makes it more malleable. Okay. You can take it to the iron and you can iron this down as flat as you need to get it. I'm just going to, in the interest of time, I'm just going to press it with my Hero marker and roll it in my fingers. Okay. So now that's your pocket. Your pocket we're going to place on top of our lining bottom. But before we do that, I'm going to divide the pocket in half. You can create 3 sections if you'd like. I'm going to, or 4 or 5, how many you want. Um, what I will mention to you is if you plan to use it for like a pen, make sure that you stitch. Once you stitch it, make sure you come back and you stitch a line at whatever the depth is of the pen. Because see, this is a lot longer, so you don't want your pen to get lost. So once you've done, just stitch a line from here to wherever you drew that pen opening right here. So this will be empty or void space that you won't use, but at least your pen won't get lost in the bottom of that little tiny um, space that you created. So I am going to stitch across the top here, and I'm going to stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. So I'm going to stitch 1/4 of an inch, and trying to remember what the pattern says. If it's 1/4 and 1/8, I'm trying to remember what it is. Okay. So that I know where I have to go, I'm just going to fold this in half because I want 2 equal sections. So I'm going to fold this in half, just like that. And I'm going to mark the center. You should mark this with a tool that is erasable or that disappears. I'm just going to do a little black mark here with this pen. And then what I'm going to do is at the bottom, I'm going to put a snip. So I'm going to pull this as tight as I can, so make sure that's tight. And I'm going to put a snip in the bottom. So I'll top stitch at 1/8. I don't know what it says, but whatever it says to do at the top stitch. So I have half of it here and half at the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my ruler and make sure, just look at it and make sure that it's even on both sides. And it is. I can see it's even. I have you take in the box that everybody got for this month, you have one of these pens. You can use this or a chalk liner. And I don't have my chalk liner handy, but I have you draw a line. And that the reason I have you draw a line down the center is because I have you stitch to either side of that line. So I'm just going to draw this. This is going to disappear with an iron. You can use a pencil, because then you can erase it if you want. And I'm drawing a black line, so it's hard to see. I was looking for the red. I have a red one and a blue one. Oh, here's the blue one. The blue may be hard to see on the blue, but it's easy to see on the other colors. So, okay. So I don't know if you can see, I drew a line right there. So what I'm going to have you do is you're going to stitch. We're going to top stitch this first. Once we've done that, we're going to stitch down the side here. I know that I said we're going to sew this into the bag, but even though we're going to sew it, I'm going to have you sew across here at 1/8 of an inch. And then what I'm going to have you do is you're going to stitch not on this line, but you're going to stitch to the right of it, go to the top until you see your seam line up here at 1/8 of an inch. You're going to pivot and stitch across like 2 stitches, which should put you on the other side of the line over here. And then you're going to stitch down. Okay. So when you do this, it should be about 1/4 of an inch on either side, which is about 1/2 an inch. If you want it smaller, you can make it 1/8 of an inch. But if you use the edge of your presser foot and follow that line, you're in the right place. And coming down, you should also be following the line. And then we're going to sew across the bottom, and then we're going to sew back up to the top to stitch this edge onto our bag. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew the top stitching across the top here. And I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch across the top, but you should follow whatever the directions say to do. Okay. Once I've done that, I'm going to come back. I'm going to place this on the lining bottom, and we're going to stitch down. We're going to stitch the lining bottom and the pocket here, go up, go across. So go up until we hit that top stitch line. So we should be stitching over the top stitch line, come down the other side and stitch across. Yes, there will be a space in here that's not stitched, and that's totally fine. So I hope that makes sense. So let's top stitch this first. And you can put 1 or 2, just follow the directions. I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch. And it should be at a 4. I had it at a 3. And when you get to the end, you're going to back tack as well. Okay? And then just cut your thread. All right, so that's the top stitch line. Follow whatever the direction said to do. So if you want to do additional, if it only had you do 1 and you want to do 2, you do another one. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to start assembling our bag. So we're going to get this piece, which is, I'm going to say front or back, depending on how you want to use it. I'm going to call it the front. And we have to align that center mark on the bottom with the center mark on this. So I'm going to fold this in half and I'm going to mark a center line. Now I'm going to snip it 1/8 of an inch, a little snip at the bottom here. If you would prefer, you may use a marking tool and just place a mark that you won't see. And don't forget, reposition the top as well. Make sure it's the center and put a snip or marking, mark it with whatever you want to do for your marking tool. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to align the bottom center marks here, and I'm going to clip along that center. So I'm going to clip right here. I'm going to smooth it out, and I'm going to clip over here as well. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky, right? Because we're not clipping this side here. You can put a piece, if you want, of double-sided tape, or if you have paper tape, you can use that to hold it in place. What I'm going to advise you to do is clip in this corner here as well. So clip right there in the corner, and the same on this side, and it'll keep it down. Take your time with this. So we're going to smooth it. What we're going to do is, if you want to, you can also take a pin. Just be careful because sometimes it can be a little tough getting through that waterproof canvas, and you can pin it if you'd like. All right. So we're going to stitch. We're going to start and back tack, right? You should go over a little bit over so it locks it in, but we're going to back tack this. We're going to come down the side, cross the bottom at 1/8 of an inch up this side again, and back tack up here. So we're going to lock it in. Oh, sorry. We're going to come down here across the bottom. When we get to within 1/4 of an inch of this line, we're going to pivot and we're going to go up so that this is on the edge of our presser foot. Go up till we hit this top stitch line, go across a couple of stitches and come back down, and it should be the edge of your presser foot. I'm just going to take a quick check because I really should check to see what the measurements are. But follow the instructions. You know what it says. I'm saying, do it at 1/4 of an inch. If it says 1/8 of an inch, do it at 1/8 of an inch. If it says 1/8 of an inch and you're not comfortable with seeing it inside, then do the 1/4 of an inch, right? So it's just a concept that you need to understand. We're going to go up, across, and down, then across the bottom, and then back up. Using 1/8 of an inch throughout means you don't have to change your, you don't have to change your mindset as you just have an 1/8 of an inch. The bottom should definitely be that 1/8 of an inch. So let's go to the sewing machine and stitch this. So since I'm not sewing across the top, right, at all, right, you're not sewing across this top. I don't want to start at the bottom and get to the top because then I have nowhere to go. So I'm going to start at the top and stitch down one of these sides. So make sure it's totally flat, and mine is flat. Put my needle down because it is a little bit chunky in that corner. So I put the needle down and I'm going to top stitch. So I'm going to stitch forward a couple of stitches and then backwards. And I do go off of it because I want to make it sort of like a wraparound stitch right there in the corner. So it shouldn't be a big wraparound, but it should be a wraparound that locks it in. Stitching across the bottom now. I'm not changing my stitch length because it really doesn't matter. But just make sure it's 1/8 of an inch that you're attaching the lining to the pocket. When I get to this center line, and I know where it is because I put my clip there, right? I put that little clip there, and I have a notch. I'm going to get to about 1/4 of an inch away. Needles in the down position. Rotate it. Make sure it's coming in the up position. Lift your presser foot. The edge of this, the edge here should be on that line. So that's how you know that you're sewing a straight line. If you're using the 1/8 of an inch, then you should see the line right in here next to the needle. But I'm doing 1/4 of an inch, so I'm stitching straight up. When I get to the top stitch over here that I did, I'm going to try to get exactly in line. You don't have to get exactly in the stitch because you may not be able to get to an exact stitch hole. But you want to definitely get in, in line. So I actually was able to move it and turn it. Okay, so once it's down, make sure it's coming up. Lift your presser foot. I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to lower my presser foot, and I'm going to stitch across that top stitch line. So it's about maybe, I don't know, like 2 stitches. And I'm just going to back tack. Because keep in mind, you're going to be putting things in and out, right? And I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to rotate again. I'm going to check. I should be at the edge of that line, and I am. I'm on the edge of my line, which goes right here, the edge of my presser foot. And I'm going to come down. I'm just going to follow that line. When I get to about 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to rotate, sew across the bottom. When I get to the corner, about 1/8 of an inch, with my presser foot, make sure the needle's down. Like I said, if the directions say 1/4 of an inch, do 1/4 of an inch. Or do what makes you comfortable. If you want to do 1/4 of an inch because it makes you comfortable, absolutely do 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to go a little bit over, and I'm going to back. And I'm going to go forward again. And I'm going to back. Okay? And I'm going to take out my needle. All right. And then it's done. So let's take a look and see what it looks like. Great idea. Thank you, Brenda. I hope you're talking to me. I don't know. It's like sometimes there's chatter going on. Okay. So now we have 2 separate pockets. I have one here. Right? But you can see how deep it is. I stuck my scissor in there and it disappeared. So that's why I said to you, if you're going to do something where you have, like some people like to have pens. So if you're going to create like pen pockets here, like a couple of pen pockets, make sure that you do the, the pen pocket, but then do like lines going across. So you're going to match the line here and the line here so that the pen will only stop at that point. So that's just, other than that, it's a little tiny pocket and it's hard to get your fingers in there. But I've also stitched it to the bottom so you don't have to do that bottom piece. All right, so it's a little bit different. Sometimes we do slip pockets and we actually attach it up here somewhere. And then there's all this extra space. And I was just trying to use the depth. This is especially good because sometimes you have, if you're going to use it as a beach bag, even a diaper bag, which somebody mentioned, perfect size to put like 2 baby bottles in there, or even diapers. If you measure out the diaper, a couple of diapers in there is also a good thing to do. Okay. So Vonna, you're never late. You're always on time. So now what we're going to do is put everything together for the lining of the bag, right? So we've done this pocket. We've done this. We have to put our borders in. So we're going to put our borders in, and when we put the borders in, we're going to put it together exactly like we did the front, the front exterior, where we're going to put all the pieces together, and then we're going to top stitch straight across and around. And we're going to have to put this, right? We're going to have to do these. So here goes where we're going to add the zipper first, right? Because we have to add the zipper so it's between the bottom and the top. So let's grab the same piece. So I'm going to grab this piece here first, put everything else to the side. I'm going to get my zipper, right? And you have to decide for yourself where you want this pocket to be. So this pocket could be in the front of your bag, it could be in the back of your bag. But once you decide where that is, you can then decide how you want your zipper to open. Do you want it to open left to right or right to left? Your decision. You make that whatever it is you want to do. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to clip this so I get the center mark. And I'm going to do that on one side, and I'm going to do it on the other side as well. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I may have to trim this because that looks like it's more than 1/4 inch. So I may have to, and this is easy, honestly. This may happen to you. So I'm just take a moment here, right? I don't know if you can see it. It looks as if this waterproof canvas piece is not as big, or maybe I didn't pull it as tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim them both to the same width, right? Because I can see that. So I'm going to trim this, which means I'm going to make it even. And what am I using? I'm using this edge, right? I'm using this edge all the way down to determine where I'm cutting. All right, and I want them the same width. So that's all I'm going to do is make sure that they're the same width. And when I say the same width, you want to make sure I'll show you what I mean. You want to make sure the left and the right. So you want to make sure this side of the zipper and that side of the zipper are the same width. You don't want one side to be 3 inches and the other side to be 2 inches, right? So I just cut a straight line there. And this one I think is pretty good. And I'm just going to measure it. Just like that. I think it's just a little bit off on the edge over there. Just on the ends, right? And yes, you can go back in and rebase them together if you know. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, I won't do that. I'm just going to cut them even. So now I know they're both the same size. That could have been my fast cutting measurements. I don't know. Doesn't matter. They're the same size now. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece here. Once again, you should have marked the center. So I'll fold this again. I missed doing that. And I'll mark the center of this piece here. Determine which way you want to open your bag. All right. So you can play around with that a little bit. If there's no center mark here, like I don't see a center mark, you want to fold this in half again. Match up your edges, but also match up these pieces here, right? That should help you get your center as well. All right, and then you're going to cut a little or mark it with the pen. For some reason I marked the bottom of the lining, but I didn't mark that. Okay, so I want my bag to open left to right. I'm going to match the center with the center. Now, when I'm looking at the center, it's not the center with the zipper. It's not this. It's these two pieces that you're marking the center, not these two pieces. If you do those two pieces, your center mark's going to come out over here. We don't want that. We want the center of the fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is clip it. It should be, okay, It's going to be, this is right side up, but it's really right side to right side of the two purple pieces, right? So this is right side up, this is right side up. I'm going to clip those in place. Make sure when you're clipping this, you clip this piece because it's very easy for it to go like this. So make sure you catch that piece right there and you clip it on both sides. So I'm going to clip this side as well. Just like that. Okay. And then put as many extra clips as you need to get in there for it to be the way you want it to be. So now, once I've done that, I'm going to baste stitch across here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I need to put the other piece, the overlay piece on here. And in order to put the overlay piece, I don't remember I said I don't want that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I need to put this in so it matches that. So that's how I get the top border. Okay, so let's baste this in at a six on your sewing machine, or the longest stitch length, whichever makes you comfortable, at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So I just want to temporarily put it in there. I don't use tape to do this. I do baste it in, but I guess you can use tape if you want to, but I don't. The thing about the tape is if it's too wide, you now have pieces of tape exposed all over the place, and I don't like that, so I don't use tape. Okay, so now I've basted that in. It's basted in. And we're going to go and lay that over that top piece on. So we're going to take our top piece here. Make sure that it's facing in whatever direction you want it to be facing in, right? So I want mine with my peaks facing down because that's the exterior of my bag, but you know, however you want it to be facing, left or right, doesn't matter. Just make sure it's facing in that direction. I am going to take 2 snips here, one here and one here for the center. Now we're going to lay the right side of the exterior fabric. So we're going to place them together, the right sides. I want the peaks to go down. So watch this. When I flip this up, my peaks are facing up. So I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to put it again here. I'm going to flip it up and I can see they're facing down. So now I know that's the right way to do it. So always double check. So now I can sew this in using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Move your zipper out of the way. If you have to, clip it, you know, down here, but move it out of the way. Nothing worse than you start sewing and all of a sudden it's like getting in the way on the, or it gets underneath the zipper foot, or, you know, strange things happen. Yeah, underneath your sewing foot, I should have said. Okay. So now we're going to permanently sew this in at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Hi, Yvette Barrett. How are you? Is anybody doing anything exciting for this weekend? This is the long weekend. Well, for some of us, it's a long weekend. For others of us who are retired, I guess every weekend's a long weekend. But anybody doing anything exciting for the, or celebrating? So once again, I'm gonna change my stitch length to 3 because I had it up at 6 to baste this in, but I need to put it up to down to 3. And then I'm gonna stitch it a 1/4 inch. Make sure to back tack. Please also make sure that where I told you the clip over here, that it's flat. You don't want to do it where, and make sure that even the pocket piece over here is flat. So make sure it's totally flat when you sew over it. Okay, that's one side down. Now we will not be stitching this quite yet. We will not be top stitching it. Like I said, we're going to put all our pieces together and then we will top stitch so it looks neat. Kind of messed it up over there, but that's okay. So that's one piece. We now have to sew the other side. So grab your other pocket piece, right? We've already marked the center. We've marked the center here. I'm going to align those two center marks just like I did before. I will go back and baste it in. So this should go a little bit quicker because you've done this before, right? On the other side. So, right. I'm going to baste that in real quick. Yvette said she's one of those that are retired. I realized when I was saying it that you know, if you're retired, it's not a long weekend, right? I mean, it is, but it's not. Hang out with the grands in PA. That sounds like exciting times. And it'll be cool up there still, right, Yvette? I mean, the weather's changing, but I think in New York it's going to be 70 something. I don't know how much it's going to be where everybody else is, but I think it's going to be 70 something in PA. Is a little bit cooler. So what I'm going to do, just to try to get some of this out of the way, is I'm going to open my zipper and let that other piece of fabric fall down, just so it's kind of out of my way when I stitch. And I don't have like a tight space to stitch in, so I just, you know, let it drop. And then I'm going to base stitch this at 1/8 of an inch. So turn your stitch length up to 6. If you forget, don't worry. It's not that important. It's more important that you stitch at 1/8 of an inch than it is that you do the basting stitch. Because you don't want to see this stitch. So okay. So now we've done that one. It's cool. The weather here is crazy though. It's up and down and up and down. I think last weekend it was 90 something degrees. I think Jillian was on. I don't know if she's still on, but she was saying she had snow. we had a heat wave and she had snow. So let's take a look and see what we've done, right? So we've done this. So far, so good. Right? So we only have half of it done on this side. So now we're going to take that other side. All right, we're going to take this one. Once again, double check. So I'm going to cut my centers. So I'm going to fold this in half just like this. I'm going to snip my centers. I'm going to check it. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to lay it here, and I'm going to flip it up. My peaks, once again, are pointing up. I want them to point down. So I'm going to flip it around again, and then I'm going to flip it up, and I can see that's the right direction. So I'm going to look at my center for my center mark, which is here. Like I said, I always start at the center, and I'm going to clip the center. So I clip the center, and then I go and clip the ends. And then I clip everything in between. So put as many clips as you need. Make sure that whatever side you're sewing from, I'm sewing from this side. So make sure the clips, the flat side is facing down so it's easy to get out and it's not curved on your bed. So now I'm going to sew that. That's going to be at a stitch length of 3 1/4 inch seam allowance. Back tack at the beginning, at the end. So just remember to do that. And I'm going to open my zipper just to get that out of the way. It's so much material when I'm sewing, and so I like to get it out of the way. I don't care that it dangles. I just care that it's in the way. Okay. A little premature taking out the clips. I took it out and I shouldn't have. Okay. So we're going to stitch this and back tack. And it is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. Almost there. Okay. So now we've gotten that right for our pockets and everything. That's all sewed together. Flip this open. All right. You can see we have a pocket on one side and the other side. And then this is our top piece over here. So I'm going to take this and put it to the side for right now. We're going to come back to it, but I'm going to put it to the side. Because what we need to do is we need to attach the top pieces of our side. So I'm going to do those. So all we're going to do is take these, and you'll know whether you have it right or not because that's wrong, right? You can see it's long on this. And we're going to clip them in place, and we're going to attach them. And that should be a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. And I'll do them both at the same time. Okay, so we're going to sew these at a 1/4 inch. Okay. So I'm going to do these sort of chain stitching. So I'm going to start with one. Back stitch at the beginning and the end, don't forget. And then when I come off of one, the needle is right off of that one. I'm just going to stick the other one right under the press. So I'm not cutting it. I'm just sticking it right next to the needle. And I'm going to keep sewing. And I back tack, and then I just keep sewing. Okay. So now that's our side pieces. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. Okay. So I'm going to open the zipper here. And it's going to be a little bit tricky. And you can see it does lay flat. So it does lay flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my side pieces. Okay, I'm going to take one of my side pieces and I'm going to attach it to one of these ends. So either this end or the other end. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to attach it. So we're going to put it right sides together. No, I have not top stitched this yet. I'm going to do this when I'm done. I'm going to take this piece here. You're going to open it up, smooth it out, place it against this. Make sure that you match. Sorry. It should lay flat when you open it up. I'm going to take the side piece, right sides together, along one of the edges, not the one in the middle right now, just the edges. So we'll do the easiest one first. We're going to match these two together. Make sure that you match them. You can fold one down and one up. I'm going to tell you to fold them both up though. So they should both be folded up where they meet right here. And you're going to place a clip. You're then going to go down to the bottom and match the bottom pieces. Mine's a little bit longer. I'll cut it later, but it's a little bit longer. And then you're going to match the top piece. And then we're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance to attach the side piece to the other piece. So let's do that now. It's a 1/4 inch seam allowance, remember. And I'm going to trim this bottom later. It's a little bit too long. It's a stitch length of 3. I forgot to mention that. So it is a stitch length of 3. And the reason it's odd is because I'm sitting, I don't know if you can see whenever I get close to the camera here. So it's a tight space. You shouldn't have this much difficulty with doing it. It should be pretty easy. Take your time over the thick part there. Don't want you breaking any needles. So that's one side. So we're going to do, now we have to do the hard part, which is the part in the middle. But we can get it done. So now what we're going to do is close our zipper, just like this. And absolutely, if this is too hard for you, what I will say to you is just top stitch the pieces individually if it's too much for you. Like I said, I just want it to look like it's one continuous row of stitches. All right. And the other thing you want to make sure that I'm going to close the zipper because I want to make sure that the pieces are turned the right way, because if I do this and they're turned the wrong way, I'm going to scream. But I don't know if you saw me twisting. I want to make sure. Close your zipper and make sure that everything is straight. Okay? I'm going to take my zipper and I'm just going to clip it out of the way. So I'm just tucking it in here and I'm going to clip it over here just to keep it out of the way so it's not in the way when I'm sewing. Okay. So now I'm folding this back. I'm going to take this other piece and I'm going to put it here right sides together. My measurements were really off this time, huh? Okay. You're going to open this up like you did on the other side, right? This is the top. I'm going to clip this here. I'm going to clip on the side where they meet first. I'm going to clip the bottom. I'm going to clip the top, and then I'm going to clip everything in between. Normally I would clip like the center, and then I clip the top and the bottom. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew this using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So Brenda says she likes to nest them. I nest them in the corner, but when it comes to borders, I push them either up or down because when you nest them, it doesn't give a neat look. I know it seems odd, like it should work. So usually in bag making, they'll tell you to either open the seam, but very rarely have I seen anybody nest the that part of the seam when there's a border. But at the top, I will nest it, and I do take clues from you quilters because I don't quilt. So you all have some really great tips. Okay. So now I'm gonna start sewing. Back stitch, top and bottom. Okay. Oops. Sorry about that, guys. So that is one side. All right, so that's over here. Now I have to take this side and bring it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew that. So this side here will be complete and the other side will be open. So I'm going to do that again. And I'll show you in a minute. And usually what they do in bag making is they will have you stitch these pieces separately. So they'll say top stitch this, set aside, top stitch this, set aside. And when you put them together and they're telling you to top stitch, and this is to Brenda's point because you can do it, but when you normally see sewing directions for bags, they'll tell you to top stitch this right here because they do it in each section. And then what they will do is tell you push it up to the top or push the seam down to the bottom. So they'll say either push it up to the top and top stitch or down to the bottom and top stitch. And you'll find after you do that for each piece, the seams are pointing in the same direction. So there is no nesting when you get to the corners. Okay, so I'm going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We've done everything except sew this side. So I'm going to open the zipper up just like that. And you should be able to see it's a totally flat piece. You see that? It's a totally flat piece. So it's just like the front. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from one side. So I'm starting from one side and so all the way down 1/8 of an inch so I get to the opposite side. But it is one flat piece. And even though the zipper's in the middle, there's enough give that it should be flat. Okay. So let's sew from one end to the other. And attach it to the front. So just to show you, maybe kind of hard to see because um, but I top stitched, and I'm going to try to show you. I top stitched from the side straight across that seam, all the way across, and it just looks neater and continuous. I know you think nobody's looking on the inside of your bag, so you don't have to do this. If you want, you could top stitch each one as you finish it and then put it all together. I just thought that this would make it look really nice because it looks very polished and finished if somebody's looking. And that's the same thing we did on the outside. So now what we're going to do is before we sew this up, remember on the other side, we actually attach the bottom to a piece of our bag. So let's mark the centers. And then we also have to mark the corner. Remember there was that little corner that we have to mark. So I'm just folding this in half and I'm snipping it. If you want, you can also mark the short sides if you want to mark the center here. But if you do that, then you should also come to the side here and mark it as well. So I have a little bit, I can see it, a little bit of an issue over here. And I saw it when I was sewing it. So I'm going to just fix it. where I'm a little bit off. I don't know what I was going through when I was cutting this bag. I'm off by like a quarter of an inch and then like an eighth of an inch over there. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which piece you attach this to. You can attach it to the front, the one with the front pocket or the back pocket. You just need to attach this to one side. So it's just easier to attach it when it's flat. The other thing we need to do is we need to mark a little box here. Remember we marked that little box so we know where we started and stopped for our quarter of an inch. So I'm going to do that. Now this may be a little bit more difficult to see because it's waterproof canvas. So use something that you can see very easy. I'm using this blue. I don't know if you can see it. It's blue in the corner. I don't know if you could see it, but that's what I'm using. Okay, so yes, you did lose sound, and thank you for that. Okay, hopefully when I go back, I should pay attention. Hi, Crafty Whitney. Thank you guys for telling me. All I was simply saying is that when I was the sewing areas that we're sewing straight across, I really wasn't saying anything exciting, or you didn't really miss much, but thank you for letting me know, because I may say something important when I get back over there the next time. I guess I was becoming too trusting of StreamYard that it would not conk out on me again tonight. Okay. So remember when we did the front piece, what I said to you is just sew until you get to that point. So when you get to the point right here, you're going to stop and back tack. When you sew across here and you get to that point, you're going to back tack. By getting to the same point, it should, you don't have to go all the way to the end, and it should lock it in right there so you have a finished corner. So I'm going to do the first side. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you do this side or that side. I'm going to just do this side for no particular reason. I'm going to put this right sides together like this. I am going to clip them in place. I always start at the center. And when I sew, I am going to sew from the top because that's where my corners are. And I will be sewing from the top. Okay. And then when we come back, we're going to do this corner and we're going to sew that like that. So let's sew one side and then sew the other side, the rest of the corners. So hopefully you guys won't lose that. I think I clicked on a button. Because my screen is touch screen. So I think I clicked on a button when I went back over there. So let's sew across the bottom, and we're going to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to sew this across the bottom. Everything I can not to jostle you guys around down here. Next time I do this, I'm going to have to find a better camera angle. Last night it was perfect. And my daughter, who does theater, keeps telling me, "Mommy, just put tape on the floor so you know how to set up the tripod every single time." But you know, what does she know? She's only 23. She knows nothing. Yeah. So I'm gonna sew this. I'm gonna start a little bit before or on that point. I'm gonna start on that point, and then I'm going to stitch, and then I'm a back stitch. I'm going forward and back. And then I'm going to stitch across the bottom. know I'm going to be a little bit off, but I'm going to fix it. Oh, I'm a lot off over here. Okay. I'm just going to, I have to fix this because I don't know, I cut my bottom wrong. But it's okay. Fix it there. And when you get to the other point on the other side, just stop. And I should have told you to turn down to 3. It doesn't matter. It's at a 4. It doesn't matter. Okay. Now we're going to go in and we're going to cut. We're going to sew the other sides all together. So let me just show you the cutting mat, and then I'll come back here one time and sew the entire bag together. But let me just show you. Hey, Miss Barna. What's the one thing you like about quilting? That you lose the sound? I'm missing that. Okay. So what I'm going to do when I go back to the sewing machine is I sewed that bottom on. I'm now going to sew the sides. So I'm going to sew this side to this side. I'm just trying to sew as much as I can while it's flat before I go back to the sewing machine. So I'm going to clip this right here, nesting the seams. Yeah, I actually love doing that. And when I learned that, because a quilter didn't share with me to tell me that, but when I saw somebody do it, I was like, that's a genius. Because my bags in the beginning, I could never get the exterior seams on the side to come out nicely. One was always higher or lower than the other one. And then I saw a quilter do it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to give that a try on bags. And it was, so ever since then, I do that for the outside of bags always. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew up that side like I mentioned. And then while I'm there, I'll talk you through this. I'm going to line up these bottom seams. So the long seams first. So I'm clipping those together. When I'm done, I'm going to do those. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do the sides. But I'm going to do it all at the sewing machine. So I'm going to just talk through it. I won't keep coming back here. I'll just talk through it because we really are, I promise you, almost done. Because the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take this lining and the exterior, put them together, and we're going to do our top stitching, and then we're going to be done. Okay? So let me just go and sew this side seam first, but then I'll talk through the other things at the sewing machine. Okay? So the side seam is first. Remember your stitch length is at 3. You can start at the top or the bottom, it doesn't matter. I'm starting at the bottom. What time is it everywhere? I've lost track of time. It's 11:15 here. I don't know if anybody's like me, but I tend to sew into the wee hours of the morning, or I used to. I don't do it as much, but I used to sew. I used to be up sewing from like Saturday morning to like Sunday morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't do it as much anymore, but okay. So done that. All right. So let me check one thing because I think I am out of bobbin thread. This happened the other night as well, where I got so far and then all of a sudden. But the good news is I'm glad I know it now before I get to the top stitching, right? Yeah, not a bother thread. Before I get to the top stitching, because there's nothing worse than you get to the top stitching and you get stuck in between. So let me just very quickly get my roller thread and wind another bobbin, or wind this bobbin actually. So what time is it where everybody is? Nope, Vaughn, it doesn't just happen to you. I think we just get in the zone. Like I just get in the zone, and I'm like, I think it's like a never-ending bobbin. Like it's just gonna keep going, and I'm never gonna run out. Which I quickly find out is not the case. Okay. Alrighty then. Yeah, I think I'm an hour behind you. Actually, hour in front of you, Ivana. Second. So I actually lowered my needle, and it, gets caught around the little, I don't know what it's called in there, the little pin where you stick your bobbin in, and then you can't get the bobbin in. So okay, so we're back in business. So let's I just have to fix that side that I did not sew. Can you hear me? Yes, I was really on a roll, and for some reason I lost connection. And the problem is now I think the only thing I can get is my cutting mat. So I'm giving it another whirl. I had to connect my cell phone, so a hotspot. What is this? What is this? So hopefully you guys. Okay, so oh good, I went to the. It's so funny. So that's my cutting mat. You guys will see me when I switch out. That's my sewing machine. So hopefully you all can see me. I was on a roll, Brenda. I was such on a roll. So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Maybe a little delayed because I had to turn my phone into a hotspot. You would think I lived in the mountains somewhere where I had to pay extra for a signal, but I live in a big city. So I don't know what's going on, but I seem to be back up. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And we're back in action, so I'm not going to stress about it too much. Thank you for reaching out to ask what was going on. I'm determined to, get through this. It's a minor setback. So I think I sewed that corner before. Oh no, I didn't sew the corner. Okay. Didn't even sew the corner. So let's get that corner sewn up. I'm going to go upstairs when I'm done with this, and maybe it's time for the router to be rebooted. Who knows? Maybe it's just exhausted. Okay, so we're just going to sew this back. So like I mentioned, I'm not going to go back to the cutting mat. I'm just going to walk through this. So I'm going to sew this bottom piece now. And this bottom piece is the piece, the long side is actually what I'm sewing, that long side. So I'm just going to sew that up now. And then I'm going to sew the sides. All right. So just like I did yesterday, remember I said that you're going to take this and you're going to fold it in on itself like that. And then it should be easier to sew. So you can do the same thing here. So I'm going to start at that little point and do that. And once I sew this, I'm almost done. All right, so now we've sewn that side, and that was the other long side. So now the other two sides are going to be the short sides. So they're going to be these two sides here. So I have, and then once I'm done with that, like I said, we'll put the bag together, top stitch it, turn it through the pocket, top stitch it, and then we will be done. Thank you guys so much for hanging with me tonight. It's a lot easier to talk if you know that there's somebody there than, to just talk into the void. So I appreciate you guys hanging with me tonight. Let's do. I don't know if anybody has pets, but I have a cat who, for some reason, if she cannot see me, she's meowing at the window. So that's one side, and we have one more side to do, and then we will be. And this is the side bottoms that I'm closing up. So then the bottoms will be closed, and then we can put it together. So just adding some clips off camera. And I just bent these two together. So I bent the side together to make it flat. That's all I did. So that's why it looks so flat. Because I bent them together. Okay. So now we're ready to put it together. All together. And I lost my cutting mat. 1 second, guys. So we're going to grab, while that's coming up, just waiting for the cutting mat to come up. We're going to grab our bag exterior that we did the other night, and we're going to put that together with this one. So all right, so we're going to take this piece and we're going to take the exterior and we're going to put them together. So let's see how we're going to do that. So what we want to do is we want to turn, we can't put like it in like this where it's wrong side and right side. So we have to turn one right side out. We have to turn them both pretty much the same way. So wrong side out in order to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my bag exterior wrong side out. It's right side out right now, but I'm going to turn it around. So I'm just turning. I'm just pulling it all right side out. Now, the good thing about this bag is there's no front and back to the exterior, so it doesn't matter how you put it in. So I turned that right side out. And then the next thing I'm going to do, they're both right side out, is I'm going to put this on the inside. But I want the pocket to be facing me because I want to be able to reach into it easily. So that's why I'm turning this right side out, and then I'm gonna stick this into that. And that's because I want to be able to access this. I don't want to have to go in this way. If it's facing me, I can get in there pretty easy. Okay. Make sure you fold your straps inside your bag. Your strap should not be outside your bag when you do this. So make sure you take your straps and stick them inside your bag. So it should be out of the way. I started the centers and the corners, so now we get to nest these things. And that's where what Brenda mentioned and Vonna was saying, also where we push one seam allowance to the right and the other seam allowance on the other side to the left. And I have found that if you do it this way, you get really nice finished corners. So I also realized that I need quilters in my life to tell me these little things. So I'm just going to do the corners first. And then once I do the corners, I will do the center. And then I will start clipping the rest of it. So that's how I do it. And once again, at the corners, push one to the left and one to the right. And so Brenda says, I really like this bag. I might hold off on the backpack until I do this one. Maybe I'll cut them both out tomorrow. Yeah, this one is pretty quick. I know that it's taken me like, I think over 9 hours to do it, but it is quick. And the reason it's taken so long is because I've been talking and doing it rather than doing it. So, and it is big. Like, I don't know if you heard, who is it who said, oh, it's a lot bigger than they thought. And that was Nancy. But it is a pretty big size bag. I was explaining the reason I made it so big is because I thought it would also do very nicely if you're ever going on a crafting retreat. And I have an 18-inch ruler. Can you guys still hear me? Hopefully you can still hear me. I'm looking at YouTube and I don't see myself on YouTube. So I don't know what is going on. Yeah, it's great for going to the beach or on a cruise. Perfect. All right, I just came back up on YouTube. Something happened. I don't know what. But you guys can hear me okay. Thank you, Yvette. Okay. I don't know. It's so you're just going to clip the corners in place, and then just clip around the bag and nest them. So. And if you want to, you can always just pull it, to flatten it out. But I just Like I said, I just clip it. Hopefully, if you added it, when you're going to make it, once again, make sure, and I'll say this again, cut out the bottom foam piece first. Okay, cut out the bottom foam piece first, because that's the one that's critical that you have. It has to be the exact same size, and then you can cut out the other pieces of foam. So that way, if you're a little short, it won't matter. And, you know, as you know, we all put on like 150 clips or whatever we need to put on here to keep it all in place. So I'm going to sew the whole outside of the bag. I'm going to sew all of this. Because of my machine, I can't sew it. It doesn't have a free arm. So I sew it from the inside, from in here, and I go all the way around. So if it looks odd, that's why. And that's because I don't have a free arm. So I'm going to sew that all the way around at the sewing machine, and then we'll come back. So hopefully you don't lose sound at the sewing machine, and I can navigate this monster of a bag around the camera. Okay, so let's go. If you want, you can increase your stitch length a little bit. I'm going to do a 3. A 3 should be fine. I don't start at a corner. I normally start somewhere in the middle. I start at a corner when I'm doing the outside of the bag. But when I'm just sewing this together, I just start wherever I start. And I will move that from the camera in 1 second. Okay. Let's see if I can get this camera just back a little. Okay. Yes, this is a big bag. I can actually see this filled with, like, you know, a mother who puts all her kids' toys and snacks and everything like that. They just add a couple of extra 100 pockets and it'd be good to go. So I am going to sew this. That's so funny. Hi, Yana. Thank you so much. Yeah, you forgot you don't have a free. And it's odd because even when if I pull out my old brother machine, which has a zigzag stitch on it, or my Viking machine, I forget if I'm going to sew something real quickly on there. I forget that it has a free arm. So we're going to sew all the way around and take your time. Like I said, I have a camera over here, so I definitely have to take my time. But I'm going to sew all the way around. Your foam should be out of the way because it should have been cut shorter at the top. So it should be out of your way. So you shouldn't, you know, maybe you'll catch a little piece of it, but it should really be out of the way. So it shouldn't be bulky. You should really just be sewing through. At this point, it's cotton. It's all cotton that you're sewing through. No, I'm watching the camera on YouTube, and all you see is my hand, like very large hands. And I'm sure that's what you guys see on Facebook. It's very large hands. So if anybody's into hands, I guess this is their night. There's a large hand. So I'm just sewing. I'm almost finished one half of the bag, I should say. Yana, what time is it where you are? I know you're almost on the other side of the world. what's nice about this phone. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. All right. My bag slipped. By the way, this sewing machine does have a table that, and no, I don't sew with it on. It came with a table. I don't sew with it on, which would eliminate all of this. Partially. Okay, I'm almost back to the beginning. And then the only thing left to do, and I won't do it on here, but the only thing after we turn this out is to give it a good press and top stitch. So I just want to show you when it's done. I just want to do what's known as birthing the bag for those people who don't know what that is. When you reach in there and you pull that bag out through an opening, sort of like when you have a child and your child comes out through an opening. So, but I'm going to go back actually probably and rip this out. But I just want to show you what it looks like. I'm going to rip it out because I want to make this top neater. So. But in the group, you should have seen some really nice, people have finished it. I know Susan, when I saw her bag, she, oh, you weren't seeing anything, huh? Okay, let's see. Now you are. Susan had actually put purse feet, so we talked about that a little bit one night. And she showed, and I recommended that you put 6, and she did. She went in and she put 6. And then Nancy finished her bag. And Whitney finished her bag. And Whitney, if you guys didn't catch it in the group, she actually took a picture of all of the bags. So, which is a very nice picture. And that was good to see. So let's take a look. Hopefully it'll hold out for a couple more seconds. Oh, you already Saturday, and I'm guessing is it 6 a.m. or 6 p.m.? Yana, is it 6 a.m. or 6 p.m.? Okay. So here we go. Just waiting for that camera to come up. So I think my resolution may have dropped or something. I don't know. We're going to turn this inside out. So what I do is I pull out the lining. I always pull out the lining like that. You can heat this up with a blow dryer if you want. Heat it up to the waterproof canvas is more pliable. Once I pull this lining piece out, I then reach into this opening that we have, and luckily I didn't have to remember a zipper, right? Because I'm always saying, oh, remember the zipper has to be open. You don't have to worry about that. There is no zipper. I reach to an opposite corner, which is over here, and then I start pulling the bag. So I just push down and pull the bag. Like I said, this opening should be really big, so it should be not that difficult to get it out. And as you can see, it's still coming out. I would advise that you not pull at the strap. I think Nancy put rivets in hers, which is something that I recommended. Everybody asked, and I said absolutely put some rivets in there. If you have a rivet press, it's not necessary because we do some quite a bit of stitching across it. And you can see that I'm pushing. Hopefully it'll come out the other side. And I do push it against my body. There we go. And it's out. So, like I said, if you left that big opening in there that I advise that you do, it should be easy to come out. So this is one of those bags, like I mentioned, if you have 1 yard of fabric or, 1 yard of 2 different fabrics, you can definitely make this bag. It is like like I said, it is a relatively quick sew when the internet is cooperating and everything is cooperating. But and you're not talking, you're just sewing, right? So you can make a couple of these. It would also probably be cute if you made them as like girlfriend's trip kind of bag. So if girlfriends were going on a trip together, you could also make each one of your friends one. You know, I mean, I'm hoping it's not 50 bags, but you can make like, maybe 3 or 4 bags for your friends, and then everybody you give it as a gift to everybody when you got there. And then if you're somebody who does embroidery, like has an embroidery machine, you can also probably embroider their initials on it. So there's so much you can do with this basic bag. It is very big. It would make a great weekender also. Okay, Yana. You're not the only one with problems with the internet. So now you should be able to see the inside of the bag. I'm going to go back in. I'm actually going to take it out, but you would come in here, straighten this out, give it a good press, straighten it out. Okay. So I said if you roll this in your fingers and you stick clips in there. Like I said, I'm gonna take it out, but you put clips all the way around. You should have enough of a clearance here to be able to top stitch. I have you do 2 rows of top stitching. If you want, you could do 1 row at 1/4 of an inch would be fine. And like I said, this would be really cute. I, closed up the zipper, but it would be a really cute bag, like as a weekender bag. And if you do like girls trips, I'm not sure if you heard that, but if you do girls trips, it would also be really cute for that as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Not sure if you guys can still hear me. I'm hoping you can. But thank you guys so much for joining me. Sorry about the technical problems. I know it's not in my control, but the fact that you hung in there with me, you were patient with me, I appreciate it. As you know, I'm still learning the tech. I'm not used to broadcasting or streaming, I should say, to YouTube. So the software didn't cooperate very much either. So I'm just glad I got it done. I'm glad that I inspired somebody, Brenda, to maybe give this one a try before the backpack. I believe it was you who said that. But it was so much fun to be with you guys tonight. And, my whole purpose is that, if you're a big beginner bag maker or aspiring bag maker, that at least you get everything that you need to make a bag, even if it's the only bag you ever make, and that you're encouraged and you have a final product that you can use. So thanks a lot. We'll talk during the week and enjoy your holiday weekend. Bye-bye.